Hi, this is Kanaya, and today is January 20th, and now I'm working on this blanket. So now we're going to talk about Martin Luther King and the interview, how to present yourself. So we can talk about two things. We can talk about Martin Luther King, and we can talk about the interview on how to present yourself. So before that, I'm gonna give you tips and tricks on how to get ready for the interview. Next, after we talk about, want to give a little description of Martin Luther King. So now I'm going to stick to the same color. So now I'm gonna So I'm feeling confident in my hard work. So now I'm gonna make Valentine's gifts for people who wanna give gifts to their families or their friends. So now we're gonna talk about Martin Luther King Jr. So it says Martin Luther King Jr. is a day to honor the life and the work of Martin Luther King Jr. It is a civil rights leader who fought for racial equality. It's also a day to encourage people to volunteer and work to improve their communities. Here are some ways to celebrate Martin Luther King Jr. Day with kids. Discuss hopes and dreams. Ask kids what they dream of and what inspires them. Talk about how kids and their families can work to make the world a better place. Read books together. Read books about Martin Luther King Jr.'s life and work. This can help kids understand his values and engage in meaningful conversations. Visit the Martin Luther King's home. Visit the National Historical Park in Atlanta, which includes the birth home, the King Center, and Heuristic Ebenezer Baptist Church. Volunteer. Volunteer to help improve your community. More information about Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a civil rights activist in the 1950s and 60s. He led a nonviolent protest to fight for racial equality. Martin Luther King was assassinated on April 4th, 1968. Martin Luther King Jr. Day became a federal holiday in 1983. So there are some facts about Martin Luther King Jr. and his life, how he helped Americans and people get together, because many years ago there was segregation. It was segregation years ago. It was segregation going on years ago, where white people and black people couldn't be together. They had to be separate. They had to be separated. So the white people, they couldn't use the same bathroom together, or eat at the same restaurant, or get on the same bus together. They couldn't do nothing together. So one day, when Rosa Parks got on the bus, and then the man was like, the seats was only for the whites only, so she refused to give up her seat. So the police. So when the police came, they they arrested her and they took off the bus. So that's what happened when it first started. And then when the black people had to do many years ago, they had to work from 5 o'clock in the morning. So first, what the black people did, they had their rest, and they had to plant all day. So they had to work from 5 o'clock in the morning to 12 o'clock at night. And you know how long they had to work to get to plant? So either so long is from 2. So they had to work 19 hours. They couldn't even get no breaks, no nothing. White people have to sit and watch while the black people had to do all the work. So if the black people didn't do their job, then they would have to get a rope and hit them with it. So it's called a slave. Slave meaning slave. So they didn't have no freedom. So they have no freedom. They had no rights. They didn't have no choices. They didn't have nothing. They just sat there and lost. So that's why Martin Luther King had to end. That's why Martin Luther King had to end segregation, because he didn't want them to be separated. So let's see what the slavery is. The slavery is the practice of forcing people to work or limit their freedom. It can also refer to the state of being a slave, or someone who is forced to work and has limit freedom. So limit freedom means they have no freedom. Like, they had no choice but then to work. So they couldn't make any choices by them to make sure that they had what they needed, because they had no rights. So it says modern slavery. Modern slavery is a unit to. So modern slavery is a term used to describe forced labor and sex trafficking. It could also include debit bondage, forced marriage, and human trafficking. Modern slavery can affect people of all ethnicities, cultures, and religion. Victims of modern slavery may experience violence, threats, or abuse of power. So modern slavery can occur in any country in the world. So historical slavery has existed throughout history, sometimes as punishment for crimes or to pay off debits. In the United States, slavery was abolished by the 13th Amendment to the Constitution in 1985. Causes of slavery. Slavery can be caused by threats, violence, coercion, deception, or abuse of power. Slavery can also be caused by the desire to expose people for personal or commercial gain. So it's not like, so it's like so it's like they work hard, or so it's like they get threatened or get abusive power. So it says, when did slavery start? The first enslaved African arrived in Virginia in 1619, making the beginning of slavery in the United States. Explanation: in the late August of 1619, a ship called the White Lion landing at Point Comfort in Virginia with 20 to 30 enslaved Africans. The Africans were from the Dongos Kingdom and present-day Angola. The Africans were traded to Virginia colonies in exchange for supplies. The Africans brought skills in farming, herding, and blacksmithing. The Africans also brought their own culture, language, and religion belief. The transatlantic slave trade lasted for centuries. The United States abolished slavery in 1865. So, slavery is the practice of forced labor and restricted liberty. It is also a regime where one class of people, the enslaved owners, could force another, the slave, to work and limit their liberty. Throughout history, some forms of slavery existed as punishment for committed crimes or to pay off debts. So, if the African Americans commit crimes or pay off debts, they can be punished for it. So it says, when did slavery end? Slavery of the United States was officially abolished on December 18, 1965, where the 13th Amendments were ratified. However, the end of slavery was a process that took place over several years. So where the discrimination happened, or where the slavery began, or how the discrimination started. So the white people and the black people were discriminating against each other. So they just had to be separated from another. So it says key dates. January 1st, 1963. President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, which declared that enslaved people in states that were seceded from the Union were free. April 1865, the Civil War ended, which was fought over slavery. December 6, 1865, the 13th Amendment was ratified the required number of states. June 19th, 1865, Union General Gordon Granger read Order Number 3 in Gaverton, Texas, informing enslaved people that they were free. Other factors: some people escaped slavery or won their freedom in court years earlier. Slaveholders hid news of the Anticipation Proclamation in small places. In some places, the Reformation Amendment that followed the 13th Amendment expanded the rights of African Americans. So to end slavery, so the Abraham Lincoln signed an Emancipation Proclamation that the enslaved people in states that seceded from the Union were free, but the Gordon Granger read Order Number 3, informing enslaved people that were free. So it tells them, like, they don't know the true meaning of freedom. So Martin Luther King was another option. So they had him hold hands together and say segregation. Hold hands together, and then he made this "I Have a Dream" speech, saying. So now we're gonna go back to Martin Luther King. So it says, where did Martin King grow up? Martin Luther King was born in Atlanta, Georgia on January 15th, 1929. He went to Booker T. Washington High School. He was so smart that he skipped 2 grades in high school. He started his college education at Morehouse College at the young age of 15. After getting his degree in sociology from Morehouse, Martin got a divinity degree from Crosser Seminary, and then got his doctor's degree in theology from Boston University. Martin's dad was a preacher, which inspired Martin to pursue the ministry. He had a young brother and an older sister. In 1953, he married Coretta Scott. Later, they would have 4 children, including Yonda, Martin, Destra, and Bernice. How did he get involved in civil rights? In the first major civil rights action, Martin Luther King Jr. led the Montgomery bus boycott. This started when Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on a bus to a white man. She was arrested and spent the night in jail. As a result, Martin helped to organize a boycott of the public transportation system in Montgomery. The boycott lasted for over a year. It was very tense at times. Martin was arrested and his house was bombed. In the end, however, Martin prevailed and segregation on the Montgomery buses came to an end. When did King gave his famous "I Have a Dream" speech? In 1863, Martin Luther King Jr. helped to organize the famous March on Washington. Over 250,000 people attended this march in an effort to show the importance of civil rights legislation. Some of the issues the march hoped to accomplish including an end to including an end to segregation in public schools, protection from police abuse, and to get laws passed that would prevent discrimination in employment. It was at this march where Martin Luther King gave his I Have a Dream speech. This speech has become one of the most, when Martin gave his I Have a Dream speech, this speech has become one of the most famous speeches in history. The March on Washington was a great success. The Civil Rights Act was passed a year later in 1964. How did he die? Martin Luther King was assassinated on April 4th, 1968 in Memphis, Tennessee, while standing on the balcony of his hotel. He was shot by James Earl Ray. It was so sad because Martin Luther King worked so hard to get these people to end segregation. Like I feel so sad now. But now we honor. So now we understand how well Martin Luther King in his life, because his life, it was but his life was a struggle. But now the good part is he's get 2 grades to get to college. So it says interesting facts about Martin Luther King Jr. King was the youngest person to be awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964. Martin Luther King Memorial in Washington, D.C., photo by Duxtra. So Martin Luther King Jr. is a national holiday. At the Atlantic premiere of the movie Gone with the Wild, Martin sang with his church choir. There are over 730 streets in the United States named after Martin Luther King Jr. One of his main influences was Mohandas Gandhi, who taught people to protest in a nonviolent manner. He was awarded the Congressional Gold Medal and the President Medal of Freedom. The name of his original birth certificate is Michael King. This was a mistake. However, he was supposed to be named after his father, who was named for Martin Luther, the leader of the Christian Reformation movement. He is often referred to by his initials MLK. So these are facts about Martin Luther King and his life and how his life gone to. But at least Martin Luther King was a good person to stand out to help African Americans and people to stand together. So let's see. What did he say? What did he mean by in his I Have a Dream speech? in his so it says, what did Martin Luther King in his I Have a Dream speech? In his I Have a Dream speech, Martin Luther King called for an end to racism, injustice, and discrimination, for the creation of a more inclusive society. He spoke about equally he spoke about equal success to jobs, education, and public spaces, and he urged the government to take action to create lasting change. Key points about the search. King points about the speech. Equally, King spoke of a day when people would be judged by their character, not the color of their skin. Justice. Well, equally. King spoke of a day when people would be judged by their character, not the color of their skin. Justice. King called for justice to be a reality for all people. Hope. King said that people could create a stone of hope from the mountains of despair. Brotherhood. King spoke of a day when people of different races could sit together at a table of brotherhood. Civil rights. King called for an end to Jim Crow laws and segregated schools. Voting rights. King called for an end to discriminatory voting practices. King delivered his I Have a Dream speech at March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom on August 28, 1963. The speech is considered one of the most ironic in American history. So I'm glad now they get this opportunity to work at different jobs or go to different schools or have different educations. So now, at least now, people will be able to get a job or go to certain places. So it says, how long is the I Have a Dream speech? So it was 17 minutes that changed history. So on August 28th, 1963, native Georgian doctor. So it says, why did Martin Luther King made his I Have a Dream speech? So the reason why he made his I Have a Dream speech is so the purpose of Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech was to expose the African public to the justice of racial equality and persuade them to stop discriminating on the basis of So the reason why he made his I Have a Dream speech is because he wanted to end segregation. And he wanted the white people and the black people to stop discriminating against each other, because it was happening many years ago where they couldn't stop discriminating against each other. They had to do farming. They had to they have to do farming. They had to work. They had to, I don't know. So, African Americans were one of the largest of the many ethnic groups in the United States. African Americans are mainly of African ancestry, but many have non-black ancestors as well. African Americans are largely the descendants of enslaved people who were brought from their African homelands by force to work in the New World. Their rights were severely limited, and they were long denied a rightful share in the economic, social, and political progress of the United States. Nevertheless, African Americans have made basic and lasting contributions to African history and culture. So at the turn of the 21st century, more than half of the country's more than 36 million African Americans lived in the South. 10 southern states had black population, excluding 1 million African Americans were also concentrated in the largest cities, with more than 2 million living in New York City, and more than 1 million in Chicago, Detroit, Philadelphia, and Houston. Each had a black population between 500,000 and 1 million. So that was a lot of people live in these states. So names and labels. As Americans of Africans descent remarks each new plateau in their struggle for equality. They reviled their identity. The slaveholder labels of black and Negro were offensive, so they chose for euphemism or euphemism. A euphemism is a polite or indirect way of saying something that might be considered harsh, unpleasant, or taboo. Euphemisms are used to avoid causing offense or to discuss sensitive topics in a more delicate way. Examples of euphemisms. Pass away is an euphemism for die. Between jobs is a euphemism for unemployed. Seeing a man about a horse is a euphemism for going to the bathroom. Buying the farm is a euphemism for dying. Well, examples of euphemism. Rolling in the hay is a euphemism for having sexual intercourse. Visually impaired is a euphemism for someone who is particularly or completely blind. The origin of the words. The word euphemism comes from the Greek word euphemismos, which means use auspicious words. The prefix "eu" means good or well, and the word fame means speech. The word fame means speech. Uses in literature. Euphemism can be used in literature to show how a character is talking. For example, A character's use of euphemisms can indicate whether they are uptight or full-mouthed. So were offensive, so they choose the euphemism color when they were Fred, capitalized Negro, became acceptable during the migration to the North for factory jobs. Afro-Americans were adopted by civil rights activists to underline pride in their ancestral homeland, but black, the symbol of power and revolution, proved more popular. All these terms are still reflected in the names of dozens of organizations to reestablish cultural integrity in the late 1980s. Jesse Jackson proposed African American, which, unlike some baseless color label, proclaims kinships with a historical land base. In the 21st century, the terms black and African Americans both were widely used. So the early history of black people in the Americas. Africans assisted the Spanish and the Portuguese during their early exploration of the Americas. In the 16th century, some black explorers settled in the Mississippi Valley and in the areas that became South Carolina and New Mexico. The most celebrated black explorer of the Americas were Eastman, who traveled to the Southwest in the 1530s. The uninterrupted history of black people in the U.S. began in 1619, where 20 Africans were landed in the English colony of Virginia. These individuals were not enslaved people, but indentured servants, person bound an employee for a limited number of years, as were many of the settlers of European descended whites. By the 1660s, large number of Africans were being brought to the English colonies. In 1790, black people numbered almost 760,000 and made up nearly one-fifth of the population in the United States. So attempts to hold back black servants beyond the normal term of indentured culminated in the legal establishment of black chattel slavery in Virginia in 1661 and all the English colonies by 1750. Black people were easily distinguished by their skin color. The results of evolutionary pressures favoring the presence in the skin of a dark pigment called melanin in the skin. Melanin Melanin. Melanin is a national substance that gives skin. Melanin. Melanin is a national substance that gives color to the skin, hair, and eyes, and protects them from ultraviolet light. It's produced in specialized cells called melanocytes. What does melanin do? Pigmentations. Melanin gives the color to the skin, hair, and eyes. The more melanin the person has, the darker the skin, hair, and eyes will be. Photoprotection. Melanin protects the skin and eyes from dangerous caused by ultraviolet lights. So that's what melanin does to the skin. So in the by the skin of a dark pigment called melanin population in equatorial climates from the rest of the populace, making them highly visible targets for enslavement. Moreover, the development of the belief that they were an inferior race within heaven culture made it easier for whites to rationalize the enslavement of black people. Enslaved Africans were put to work clearing and cultivating the farmlands of the New World. So they had to do farming, and they had to do a lot of stuff. So of estimate 10 million Africans brought the Americans by the trade, enslaved people about 430,000 came to the territory of what is now the United States. The overwhelming majority were taken from the area of Western Africa, stretching from present-day Senegal was taking the area of Western Africa, stretching from present day. So the increasing profitability of the slavery and the trade of enslaved people, some African themselves also captive to the European traders. The captured African were generally marched and chained to the coast and crowded into the holds of slave ships for the dreaded Middle Passage across Atlantic Ocean, usually to the West Indies. Shock, disease, and suicide were responsible for the death of at least 1/6 during the crossing. In the West Indies, the survivors were seasoned, taught the rudiments of English, and drilled in the routine and discipline of plantation life. So slavery in the United States. Enslaved people played a major though unwilling and generally unrewarded role in laying the economic foundation of the United States, especially in the South. Black people also played a leading role in the development of Southern speech, folklore, music, dancing, and food, blending the culture traits of their African homelands with those of Europe. During the 17th and 18th centuries, enslaved Africans and African Americans, those who were born in the New World, worked mainly on the tobacco, rice, and indigo plantation of the southern seaboard. Eventually, slavery became rooted in the South huge cotton and sugar plantation. Although northern businessmen made good fortunes from the trade of enslaved people and from investments in the southern plantations, slavery was never respected in the North. So that's what went wrong and how the segregation was going on. So that's why Martin Luther King had a way to stop it. He made this I Have a Dream speech saying like they want equal rights, they want people to have freedom, and they want to have choices in their life. So I'm glad that now people is able to go to interviews and get a job and go to supermarkets and basically go to restaurants and people is willing to go to school. So that's what these rights for. That's why we have freedom and we get to do what we want, because we don't let people make the choices for us. We make choices for ourselves. So now let's talk about the interview and how to present yourself. So now we talked about Martin Luther King and African Americans in slavery. So how do you present yourself at an interview? So to present yourself well in an interview, you should research the company, enroll duly, dress professionally, maintain confident body language, practice your introduction beforehand, clearly articulate your relevant skills and experience, and demonstrate enthusiasm for the position while making eye contact with the interviewer. Essentially, showcasing your qualification and suitability for the role while projecting a positive and professional demeanor. Key points to remember: preparation. Research the company, the job description, and the interviewers to tailor your response and show genuine interest. First impression. Greet the interview with a smile. Firm handshake and positive introduction. Attire. Dress appropriately for the company's culture and showing a professional appearances. Body language. Maintain a good eye contact, sit up straight, and avoid fidgeting to convey confidence. Communication. Speak clearly and concisely, using positive language to highlight your strength and accomplishments. Tell me about yourself. Prepare a concise answer that highlights your most relevant skills and experience, linking them to the job requirements. Active listening. Pay attention to the interviewer's question. Ask clarifying questions if needed and respond thoroughly. Enthusiasm. Express genuine interest in the role and the company. Questions. Prepare insightful questions to demonstrate your research and engagement with the opportunity. So remember, we don't want to use slang in our words and they say, oh, it's cool, man. Oh, so it says, what slang words you can't say at an interview? You can't say, oh, so you can't say a foul language, hate, fired, I need. You can't say basically, hate, professionalist, foul language, no, I need just, my boss is terrible. Like, you, so, so, so it says the 8 things you should never say at an interview. Because some people don't even realize what they say is a little defensive to the people that they interview with. So like I said, like some people don't even realize what they say is a little defensive to the people they are interviewed with. So I'm gonna tell you 8 things that you can't say at an interview. Are you ready for the cringe? Let's dive in. Number one, I don't have any weaknesses. So it's almost all interviews you're going to get this question. What is your biggest weaknesses? Or at least some variations of it, like what is your biggest struggle at your last job? Never say nothing. If you don't have any weaknesses, you are either too blind to see them or hiding something. So the other horrible thing to do is answer with a fake weaknesses like, I'm a perfectionist. Come on, this is not real. Like I'm a perfectionist. Come on. That's not real weaknesses. You can't tell the interviewer you're the passionlessness. They could be like, you gotta go. You definitely gotta go, because this answer doesn't belong in this question. So your interview, your interviewer asks this question because they want to see if you're honest and if the weaknesses isn't, if your weaknesses isn't going to be a future problem. So the solution, so let's see. So the solution is to give a real weaknesses you have, but frame in a way that it won't affect your job performance. For example, you can say something like, I often get confused if I have to multitask or have many different objectives to complete. So I've been working on focusing on one thing at a time. So far it seems to work. So when they ask what are your weaknesses are at an interview, you can tell them, I have in the heart, or you can say your weaknesses are so and so. So you can tell them that my weaknesses are delegating tasks, difficulty saying no, self-criticism, attention to details, impatience, lack of confidence, reward-life balance, like balancing work and personal life. Well, we don't want to say word life experience. I mean, let's see. Some people might say they have like a work-life balance. So, or missing deadlines, multitasking, time management, or up to, well, I don't think this answer, I think this person might say they're too critical of myself. So if you wanna answer what your weaknesses are, you can talk about something that you struggle with, but then highlight how you worked to improve. Something like, I can be too detail orientated, and in the past, that's held back from completing projects. So they might give different answers of what their weaknesses are and how to improve it. So number 2, it's on my resume. So when the interviewer asks you, how long were you at your last job, don't tell them to check the resume. So do not tell them to check the resume. The reason the interviewer asks you this question is because they don't want it to feel like an interview. They want to keep it as casual as possible. So if the interviewer starts reading off like, okay, I see from 2013 to 2015 you've been working at company Z, like looks like something like it, or it looks like you've also worked at part-time job at company Y for 6.5 months. So telling your interviewer to check your resume is a great way to break rapport. When I'm in a hiring position, I am literally scanning dozens or even hundreds of resumes. Either I don't remember or I want to find out. If you remember what your resume looks like, the solution: use this opportunity to recall your past experience and build rapid. Talk in a conversational tone and use this opportunity to really connect with your interviewer and show them you really are telling the truth about your past. So number three, what's the bonus or raise schedule? Now listen, I know pay is important and you should talk about it, but this question is impossible for a hiring manager to answer. Why? Because giving a raise all depends on your performance, the profit of the company, etc. Never ask this question until after you prove your performance. The solution: if you need an answer to this question, a better way to ask is to, how will I know I'm succeeding? Well, with that question, you'll learn how success is noted and celebrated at this company. Number 4, I hated my last boss. Chances are your interview might ask a question or two about your previous employment history, and you may have an entire list of things you hated about your last job. So to avoid this, they might say your boss was a jerk, your coworkers was fake or toxic. You were constantly facing burnout. Heck, maybe even the way the security smiled at you secretly drove you mad. Curly smiled at you, secretly drove you mad. Avoid negativity at all costs. I understand your boss. I understand you was mad at your boss for something that he did or something that she did, but you don't want to say those words at that interview, because they might think, oh, so they might think or they might act, so they think that you had a mean boss at your job. So you don't want to use those words. So it says, avoid negativity at all costs. This is a phenomena known as spontaneous trait transference. When you start talking negativity, the other person's brain actually assigns those traits to you. So if you say words like hate, bad, or terrible, they'll start thinking it about you. Whatever your previous situation, now is not the time to speak daggers and knives about your previous job. After all, if you manage to get this job and end up quitting, the last thing your interviewer wants is you speaking bad about them. Plus, being angry shows a negative side of yourself that will make a bad first impression. The solution: focus on framing. Instead of saying how bad your boss was, try framing your response to position yourself in a good light. For example, were you not able to showcase your strength? Maybe you stopped learning and wanted to move on for better growth. You can even say something as simple as, it just wasn't a great fit. They'll know something didn't quite match up, but realize you're also being polite. Either way, make sure you frame your answer positivity and try to remain future oriented. Instead of resenting the past, remember, it's a job interview, not a confession. I don't have any questions to ask you. So it says, the interview might ask, any questions for me? You say, nope, nothing, absolutely nothing at all. So it says, one of the questions I always ask my job applicants is, do you have any other questions for me? I love these questions because if they have any confusion at all, now that's their chance to clear things up. Is that really answering the question? I love this question because if they have a confession at all, now is the chance to clear things up. No, that's not an answer to a question. Oh my god, So you should always have a question. So the solution. So the solution is you always have a question or two ready. Asking the final questions shows your interviewer you're interested in the company and that you will understand the full scope of the job's duty. And avoid asking questions that you can easily find answers to, such as information readily available on their website. The best question to ask are the ones that are not publicly known. You can't so instead of you can't just say I love this question because if they have any confusions at all, now that's their chance to clear things up. That's not an answer to their question. It sounds like you're not ready for the job, or you don't. It looks like you don't want the job. So, for example, one of my recent applicants asked me the question, what is your personal passion project? Since I love this question and use it regularly in networking events, it showed me she did her research about me, and it was a great way to leave the room on a high note. So this person asks this personal question to interviewer, what is your personal passion project? Since I love this question. So, what is so special about this question? So, I don't get it. So, do you mean so let's backtrack for a second. So this person asks, what is your personal passion project? So, what did this person mean by this question? So it says a personal passion project is a self-direct activity that someone pursues because they are interested in it. People do passion projects for many reasons, including personal growth, creative expressions, and emotional satisfaction. What are passion projects like? Passion projects can be artistic, entrepreneurial, or volunteer-based. They can be creative endeavors or endeavors, research project, or community initiative. They can be a way to learn new skill or subjects. They can be a way to build talents. Why are passion projects important? They can help people build their talents. They can help people demonstrate their commitment. They can help people stand out in the application process. They can help people build a portfolio. They can help people show personal growth. What are some examples of passion projects? Writing a musical, creating a podcast, starting a YouTube channel, creating a STEM theme board game, and coding a video game. So they might do so that's the part of the reason they might do personal passion project is so they might be learning new skill or subjects, or they might create expressions, or they might like other different stuff. But I don't understand, or maybe this person be or you could say a passion project is a personal project that someone undertakes out of a strong interest or curiosity in a particular topic, idea, or skill. So So, passion is an activity that you're passionate about, and what are you willing that you're willing to take, that you're willing to put time and effort into. So, what does person mean in a question? Is that means like what the interview is passionate about. So, what this question really is as well. What this person mean in this question is a passion or personal passion project means like what the interview is passionate about, and that you are willing, what are you willing to put time and effort into. So it's just a new way for an interviewer to see, like, it's like it's just like what did the interview put time and effort to, and then what you thinking, like, is this really a question that you should be asking at an interview, especially when you're meeting up to an interview. So the solution might be, what questions can you ask at the interview? So you might ask, what are the key responsibilities of this position? How would you describe the company's culture? What are the opportunities for professional growth within this role? Can you tell me about a recent project that the team worked on? What are the biggest challenge you anticipate for the new hire in this position? So these are questions you can ask, as opposed to asking, like, what is your personal passion project? Because that's not really a question that you should be asking at an interview, because they be like, I don't know what this question is. Anything, let's move on. Number 6, I don't know. So, I don't know is not a necessary answer that you should say at an interview. So it says, interview ask, what would you do if the irrigation system in Riverbed were at the full capacity, and we certainly needed more output? You say, I don't know. So I don't know is not a good enough answer to the interview, because the interview is not gonna learn or do. It's not gonna the interview is not gonna get any details from you or get any answers. It says, have you ever so if you've been asked a tough questions, you can put the answer and you could give the answer. You could think about it and then you can try to answer the question. But if you could say, I don't understand the question. Could you rephrase this question in a different way? As opposed to saying, I don't know. Because I don't know is not a definite answer. So it says, have you been asked a really tough question you really didn't know the answer to? Your thought process might have been something like this. What do I say? Should I lie? What's that even mean? Basically, your brain goes haywire thinking of all the possible responses. And what you actually end up settling on is, I don't know. This response is deadly because it's an instant conversation killer. After I don't know, you're basically telling your interviewer they're going to have to be. So you're basically telling your interviewer they're going to have to hold your hand all the time if you somehow get the job. P.S. I've heard this answer twice, and needless to say, didn't get an offer. The solution is you can add a condition if you really don't know. The best method is to just tell them, whatever you do, do not lie. Lies can easily be spotted and put you in the event and put you. Do not lie. Lies can easily be spotted and put you in an even worse position than before. What you can do is say you don't know, but add a condition at the end. For example, you can say, I don't know, but I find out by looking it up online, asking a manager, etc. I don't know, but I like to try this. I don't know, but I face a similar situation when XYZ by XYZ. By adding a condition, you are showing your potential employer you are honest and willing to learn or think strategically. Employers don't necessarily want the smartest person. Don't necessarily want the smartest person of the bunch. Most want someone who is eager to learn and take on new challenges without simply giving up. And it might be even a trapdoor to see what you say when faced with an impossible to solve questions. So, number 7, you can get rid of me anytime. So, the interview asks, why should I hire you? And you say, you can get rid of me anytime. So, here are the funniest things you should not say in an interview. Believe it or not, I actually heard this from a potential candidate once as we finished our interview. Right after we exchanged thanks, he turned out to me and say, oh, by the way, I know I'm not the best, but you can get rid of me anytime if you want. Ouch. Way to shoot yourself in the foot. The solution is be competent. Even if you're just acting, act like you belong. Nobody wants to hire a black sheep for the company. If you're having a hard time, try to practice some good old self-love or remind yourself why you a good fit for the company in the first place. So I would suggest you say is, I'm a hard worker, I'm a team player, and I work well with people. So you can say things like that. So you don't have to be funny in order to get the job, or you don't have to act in a way that you want the job, because once you act the way that you want the job, you have to show these people that you want the job and they're willing to hire you. So it says, number 8, I don't have my resume. The interview asks, can we go over your resume? And you say, oops, I don't have it. Imagine this. You sit down for an interview, your potential employer looks you straight in the eyes and he asks you for your resume, except you didn't bring it. big gulp. The solution: be prepared. Even if you email your resume to them beforehand, always be prepared and assume it's your job to have it ready. Bring 2 copies of your resume, one for your interviewer and one for you. I remember one of my earliest interviews. I only prepared 1 copy and had to play back and forth with the interviewer. So so you think you playing with their minds? Like they're not, like they're dumb, or they like, come on, man. You should be prepared. Boy, that was embarrassing. If you're going to have more than one interviewer, make sure there are enough copies of your resume for every person in the room to have one. Number 9, bonus. What's your name again? The interviewer asks, "It was great to meet you, Vanessa." You could say, "Yeah, what's your name again?" So here's a bonus thing never say in an interview. The last thing you want to do is to forget your interviewer's name. I've learned early on that saying the interviewer's name makes a huge impact, but it's even more impressive if they have a hard to pronounce name like Dara, the CEO of Uber. The solution: the best way to start off any good interview is to repeat the interviewer's name. If you can, make sure to get your interviewer's name beforehand and memorize it fully. Or if you're meeting your interviewer for the first time, practice repeating his or her name back. "It's a pleasure to meet you, XYZ." If you're struggling to remember people's name, you're not alone. Forgetting names is a common problem when meeting new people. Fortunately, there's an easy fix. So, you can't wait till the end of the interview to ask them what their names again, or to ask them to repeat their names. So instead you can say, "Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. It was nice meeting you, so and so, and thank you so much for your time. It was nice to meet you." So that's how you can present yourself at an interview. Because you don't want to act out at an interview. Because if you act out and the interviewer is watching you, they're not going to want to hire you for the job. Because you can't go on an interview and act like a character, not knowing what to do and how to act. So just for the sake of goodness, at least you have your questions and your resume together. So now we're going to talk about what slang words you can't say at the interview. So, like, "Oh, it's cool, man. Oh, yeah." No, that's not the way. We don't want to say that. So, there are many slang words that means, "Oh, it's cool, it's lit, it's fly, it's zooly, the cows meow, this plat is gnarly, is dope, is sick." So we don't want to use these words while at the interview. So, like I was saying, you don't have to act like a character to get the job. So you have to act normal, nicely. You have to be straightforward. All right? So now we want to talk about so avoid this. You can practice your interview questions. You take out your clothes the night before. You brush up your hair and stuff. Brush your teeth before you leave in the morning. And print out your resume a couple of days before. Or give yourself time to get yourself ready for the interview. So to get prepared for the interview, you have to print out your resumes, get your clothes out, something professional to wear. Brush up your hair, brush your teeth in the morning, and you get there early or get there on time. So I want to show you, so now I want to show you this blanket. So now you see, this is coming out nicely. So now, this is coming out pretty long. You see this? So now, put this to the side and now this is coming out pretty with the yellow and the orange. So now hopefully I gave you tricks of Martin Luther King, African Americans, and the interview. So we learned today that Martin Luther King made this "I Have a Dream" speech to end segregation, and he led a protest in Washington. African Americans had to work by themselves, so the white people couldn't help them, so they had to farm and they had to get separated. And I learned what you can't say at the interview that's gonna offend others, offend the interviewer, and words that you can tell them, or the words that you should say. So like what you should and shouldn't say at the interview, and how to get yourself ready for the interview. So this is it for this video. So I hope you like, subscribe, and comment down below on my YouTube video. Thanks for watching.